Here we go. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to wait maybe a couple of minutes to allow everyone to join. I see lots of people joining, so just a few more minutes and we will begin shortly.
Hi, everyone. Welcome.
I'll just give it maybe another minute. I can see people still joining and then we'll get started.
Perfect.
Okay. Hello, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us today for the Care for Caregivers webinar series. My name is Kaval Mahmood and I'm supporting the Care for Caregivers program on behalf of Safe Care BC. If there's any technical issues or any issues or problems everyone's having, feel free to send me a message and a question or a chat, as well as an email. This session is being recorded and it will be available on the Care for Caregivers website as a resource after, so maybe in a few days. So just a quick little intro on this webinar. During this 1-hour webinar, participants will learn more about acute and chronic stress and explore effective strategies, management strategies, especially for caregivers. So I won't go into too much detail, I'll let our facilitator do that. I quickly just wanted to talk about this initiative of Care for Caregivers as a program is brought to you by Safe Care BC, CMHA BC, with funding from the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions. And although we are all joining from different parts of the province, I just wanted to acknowledge that while we meet today on a virtual platform, I'd like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we each call home. I want to start by recognizing that we are gathered on the ancestral and unceded territories of the First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people across British Columbia. We thank them for being good caretakers of this land and allowing us to be visitors on the shared territory to do good work. I will just quickly talk about our facilitator today. So Linda is the founder and director of Thrive Training and Coaching. She offers training, workshops, coaching programs, and presentations to various government and nonprofit organizations with an extensive experience in healthcare, emergency services, education, social, and public service sectors. I will turn it over to Linda now so she could explain a little bit more about the workshop and we can get right into it. So over to you, Linda. Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks, Kamal, for that introduction. I'm just going to share my screen so we can have some slides that will help guide us through the time together. I'll just confirm. Can you see the one slide, Kamal? No, great. Well, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time over your lunch hour to join this webinar. We are going to look at stress management for caregivers. And of course, stress management isn't something unique to being caregivers, but it certainly is something that can impact us when we are in caring fields, and the occupational core of what you do is about helping and supporting other people, as I know it is for all of you. There becomes that conversation about how do you care for yourself while also caring for other people. When the work has so many competing imperatives, so many demands, which of course have been really so elevated during the COVID pandemic. And I know we're at a different stage in the pandemic, but there certainly still is long-lasting impacts in the current reality around that. So I want to start by thanking you for the work that you do. I've been personally touched by the long-term care sector, and I'll say more about that in a moment. But just to give you a sense of what we will be looking at, I do want to talk a little bit about stress in these times we're in. And then we're going to unpack stress. Stress is commonplace. We all talk about stress. Everyone seems to be stressed. And that was long before the pandemic. But that has definitely escalated in the overall population health, this overall sense of higher stress, just that unsettled feeling. There's so much change and uncertainty going on in our world at large. And of course, that plays out into our individual lives and our work. And of course, we want to look at some stress management strategies. What can you actually do in your day to day that are proven strategies that can really help to lessen stress and the impact it might have on you? So we are going to have a bit of interaction. We have 45 minutes where I'll be sharing with you. We will do one poll. If you have questions, feel welcome to use the Q&A. And I'll stop at about the 45-minute mark to open it up for any questions and comments you might have. So I hope you really enjoy the hour, and I hope that you can find something in this time together that can be inspiring to you, can be helpful, and something that you can actually apply in your own daily life and work that can be valuable. So I want to introduce you to my dear mom, Marion Monk. She will be 88 years old in September, and she is in a care home in London, Ontario, where she is a caretaker of cats, as you can see in this image. These are therapeutic robo-pets, which she has adopted and gives great purpose to her daily life, caring for and loving her beloved cats. And my dad lived in the same care home where he was cared for through until the end of his life. He passed away from Alzheimer's. It'll be 6 years ago this coming September. And the same year that he passed away, just months before, our dear mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. So our family life has really been for over a decade now within a long-term care environment. We are part of the support and care team for our mom. We work closely with the care staff, the nurses, the PSWs, the recreation department, the spiritual care folks, Hans, and we, have really seen firsthand as a family how significant the work of long-term care is, and also how very challenging it is. I have seen firsthand what's real about the impact of COVID on not just residents, but on staff that have had to work in the front lines during a very complex and difficult time, to say the least. We know this time has been very hard on the long-term care sector, on residents, families, and staff alike. And I truly do want to thank you for what you personally have done, and you know best what that is in your day-to-day working life during what have been very challenging times. And the work that you do, my brother and I, he's in London, we're just talking about how we really could not imagine. Our mom is on her end of life path now, receiving palliative care. She's still going strong. She just got a manicure, but she also has cervical cancer, and that has had a palliative treatment. So I just wanted to say before diving in that I am aware of some of the complexities and stressors in the work you do and the environments that you do them, and just wanted to do a shout out and say thank you. I know you're gathering in during your lunch break. You might be at your desk, you might be in a staff room, I don't know where you might be watching this webinar, but I just want to take a moment and invite you to connect with your breath. You don't have to do anything special with it. I'm just closing my eyes for a moment. But just notice. Just allow yourself to settle in here. Notice what it took to arrive here today, what you needed to do to make this time, to join Zoom. Because arriving is something all by itself. And just acknowledge yourself for arriving here now. Just notice any thoughts you might be having. Notice any feelings, any sensations, the temperature of the air on your skin. Notice your breath moving in and out of your body, giving you life. And just take a moment to mindfully, with awareness, with self-compassion, without judgment, to arrive to the here and now. Thank you. An important stress management strategy in the fullness of our lives and work and world is to be able to take purposeful pauses, to be able to bring your attention into the moment. It's the most empowering place to be. We're often thinking about the past, thinking about the future, tending to what we're doing right now. And every time you can become more fully present, connect with your breath, you help your whole nervous system, your mind, your body, your heart, and spirit, just to align and come into present moment awareness, which is in and of itself a way to mitigate the impact of high stress. So as you can weave those types of moments of mindfulness throughout your day, as you walk down a hall, going to provide care to a resident, coming into your breath with each step, feeling your feet hit the floor, all of these things help your body to be in as settled state as possible. When you think of stress, and just thinking about stress and talking about stress can sometimes be stressful. I hope that won't be the case in our time together. But I just want you to think, what's the first thing that comes to mind when you think about stress? It might be overwhelm, might be frustration, it might be anxiety, it might be that it's just so much, it might be hard. Maybe a stressor comes to mind. If you think of a stressful situation that you're in. We just got word late last week that the care home that my dear father-in-law lives in Montreal is closing without warning, and all of the residents, including him and his partner, all need to be relocated within the next 3 weeks. That's pretty stressful for him, for our family. So you might think of something that's a stressor in your life. Just what comes to mind, and just notice it. You don't have to do anything with it, you're just noticing. I want to briefly orient us to what's been real about the COVID pandemic. And, the World Health Organization declared this pandemic a long time ago now, over 3 years ago. It was March 11th, 2020, when the pandemic was declared, and our world as we know it changed significantly, how we interact in it, how we work in it, live in it. And while the pandemic isn't over yet, we are indeed in a new phase. Many people have moved on. We have more open and regular work environments again, albeit with lasting changes. And one of the reasons, among many, that the pandemic has been so stressful for people in lots of different ways is because of the volume of change that was brought with it. And we are also living amidst high change times. Technology is rapidly changing, AI, our world is changing, climate change. There is so much change going on. And this is relevant to the conversation about stress, because if you're lying in bed at the end of the day and your mind is racing and you're trying to fall asleep and there just seems like there's so much to think about and consider, it's because there is. And we all know this. And that's on top of what's real about day-to-day family life, day-to-day work environments. So there are many stressors that are being held by most people in society today, including probably all of us here. And because there's such a lot of change going on, it's important to think about that in relation to stress, because change is the thing that happens. It's getting a new boss at work, or being in a new work environment, or having a new team member join, or having a global pandemic declared. It's the thing that happens. Transition is our emotional response to that change. It's what we have to do to adapt to changes. And during the pandemic and beyond, we've been in a constant state of adaptation. We've been in a constant state of being on a certain amount of alert, a certain amount of uncertainty. And all of this puts our bodies, our minds into a higher stress response state on a regular basis. without necessarily enough time to recover from it. So we can just kind of be staying in this high frequency stress alert type of state. And I have a dear friend who works in the field of change management, and he's written books on it. And he says, it's been said many times, it's not about the changes or about the stressors, we could say here. It's about our reactions to them. Organizations and individuals are forced to shift and change under the current reality that the future offers no new normal to seek refuge. And this piece about new normal is important because we've talked about what was normal, what might be a new normal when the pandemic is indeed finally fully over. And the reality is that the idea of normal has shifted. What we think about as being normal, what we might tune into, to anchor into, has all shifted. And because of that, that also elevates people's stress levels. It's hard to know what to expect. And that uncertainty can leave that overall sense of stress at a much higher rate for people. So let's take a closer look at stress itself. We want to be proactive when it comes to stress. So this photo here with the guy with his head in the sand is, some people have a more avoidant personality just by nature, where if I just don't look at that, maybe it'll go away, or if I don't talk about that, maybe it'll go away, or if I don't mention stress, maybe I won't feel stressed. But the reality is that when it comes to stress, the more direct we can be with our own stress, getting curious about it. How are we feeling? What are our stressors? How are we dealing with them? What do we need as resources to cope and reduce stress, and also cope with the stress we have? And so we really want to, when it comes to our overall mental health and well-being, including the conversation about stress management, we want to be direct. We want to be honest with ourselves. We want to be attentive and paying attention, not just to ourselves, but to people around us, so we can be caring and supportive and responsive to the stress needs of others, people we live with, people we work with, residents you care for. And there's a saying in the stress management arena that awareness is prevention. The more aware we are about stress, the more aware we are. The same is true about burnout. I'm not going to go into great detail about burnout in this webinar, and hope to maybe do so in the future, because there is always that question, and burnout's so common in a field like you're in high care fields. It's an occupational hazard, as is compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, moral distress. There are many unique occupational hazards when caring is at the occupational core. For now, we're going to stay looking at stress so we can keep our attention in that place in a hopefully helpful way. But to know that even taking time today to put your attention on stress, to learn about it, to become aware or remember what you already know about it, is in fact part of managing it in healthy ways, in helpful ways. So stress is an energy. If you had to describe stress energetically, you might talk about this feeling of things being in motion, things constantly changing, this sense of just sort of vibrating, even people will describe. And stress is always a combination of our personal and our work stressors. We might have some personal stressors happening, maybe some financial stress or relationship stress or something in our health. We might have then at work a high caseload. Maybe there's a lot of staff changes. Maybe there's not enough resources, it feels like, to do the work. And there's just this constant pressure to do more with less. All of these things can be swirling around. And what is important to know is that the body doesn't really care if it's because we're overworked or because we had an argument with our spouse. Our systems just know they're trying to cope. They're trying to cope with that stress load and manage. And so we just know that if we're holding all of it. And what might impact one person might not impact another. Even a stressor that could be small could feel like it's big because it might just be accumulating on many other stressors. So maybe you're racing out the door to go to work and you can't find your car keys. They might not be in the regular spot you put them. And all of a sudden that feels like a big stressor. You might be banging around and, just being upset. And of course, not being able to find our keys is a small stressor in the the scope of all that we cope with in our daily lives. But it might just be that, if our stressors are like a cup of marbles, they're just adding up, not being able to find our keys or stubbing our toe walking by a couch. It might be that one marble, that one stressor that drops into the cup that just makes it all feel too much. And that's important for us to understand, because sometimes even our own responses might seem like they're not really aligned with what just happened. We might think, gosh, that was a really big reaction to a smaller stressor. But it's how many stressors we're holding at once that we're actually coping with, that we're responding to. So how we cope is always evolving. It's evolving day to day, moment to moment, based on how tired you are, how hungry you are, how supported you feel, how many resources you have to meet the demands of and stressors that are in your life. So it's very fluid. And because of that, there's lots of opportunities to manage stress and reduce it, because it is always a constantly fluid state. And if we keep tuning into it, saying, what do I need? How can I meet that need? We become very responsive to our own stress reduction needs. Change itself is stressful, as I've already said. And this idea that the choice is in our response. And it may not always feel that way, because it can feel like so much is happening outside of us and around us. But if we can stay in that empowered state of, how am I going to manage stress? How are you going to manage stress? And to think of that in a very earnest way, then you stay in that responsiveness. And the more mindful we are, the more responsive we are, the less reactive, because we are paying attention, we are tuning in, we are taking our stressors seriously, and we're taking our stress management seriously as well, and doing regular things to help manage stress. So it's important to know our stress load, and current stressors can be many things, as we all know, and I've already said a few things, but they can be in any part of our life. They could be in our work. And this is a stat prior to COVID, but the World Health Organization does regular types of surveys and looking at what are stressors, what's going on with stress in populations around the world, in different countries, different occupational sectors. We can look to a place like CMHA, who I know are partners in providing this webinar, the Canadian Mental Health Association. They do wonderful work on the importance of managing stress, and how the link between stress and our mental health, things like anxiety, depression, and so forth. So being able to really know what your current stressors are helps you to respond to them, to be in that more responsive, proactive state. So what I'd like to do is a little exercise. You simply need a piece of paper and a pen. And if you don't have that handy, you can just simply think about these things. This is a scribble journaling exercise for stress relief. And what I'd like you to do, and I just did a little sample before we started so I could show you, is take a moment to write down any current stressors you're experiencing. Words can go on top of each other. It does not need to be legible. When you're finished, you're really just getting what's on the inside out. And there's nothing too small or large. So on mine, I put about Glenn's care home closing, my father-in-law's care home, stuff around trying to find housing for our son for university, and so forth. I broke my glasses. I've had to glue the arm on. It can be anything. And so I'm going to set a timer for 30 seconds, and for you just to start scribbling. Any stressors that are going on for you, just get them out. Okay. Here we go. I'll just sit quietly while you do that. If you don't have paper, just give yourself a chance to think about them. Just keep your pen moving. And 10 more seconds. Just scribble, scribble, scribble. Get those stressors out. Okay. I know there could be more. We could take more time with that. Just want you to take a moment to notice what it's like to think about stressors, what it's like to get them out, get them down. You don't have to be attached to them. And what I'd like you to do is just put a great big X through all of these stressors. Just put a big X, or if you'd like to, you can just crumple up your paper and just toss it aside. Just let this feeling of releasing them, letting them go. Notice what that feels like in your body. Doing an exercise like this, while it can sometimes feel stressful because we start thinking about our stressors, it can also open up some spaciousness. It can also give some stress relief to just get what's on the inside out. It's like a big exhale. Thanks for doing that, if you were able to. I'm going to say a little bit more about stress and then look at some stress management strategies. So there's a difference between good stress, which is often called eustress. And I just want to make sure you can still hear me. Kunbo, can you let me know, because my AirPod just fell out of my ear. And when I put it,
hear you.
Okay, great. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Just wanted to make sure. Be a small stressor, an AirPod falling out of your ear while you're presenting. So there's a difference between good stress and bad stress. We all need stress. We're not trying to necessarily be in a zero stress state. That's not possible. But what we're wanting to pay attention to is that we have enough stress that it's stimulating us, it's helping us get out of bed, it's helping us meet deadlines. It's there and it keeps us engaged. We can feel our own vitality. We're doing fine with the amount of stress we have. And it's something where we can meet challenges and so forth. When stress becomes negative is when it's overwhelming our resources. We're not having enough time for stress recovery. We're not having enough time for relaxation. And we kind of cross this, I think of it as a red line or a zone where the stress we have is no longer in that zone where we're doing fine and we're engaged and we're stimulated, but rather we're overwhelmed. We might be feeling anxious and we just don't feel like we're managing as well as we would like to. It's just too much. And this can happen to any of us at different times. And there's different types of stress. There's acute stress, which is our immediate response to the stressors in our life. So if you're driving to work and someone all of a sudden you're stuck in traffic, you're going to respond. Maybe you clench the wheel a little, steering wheel a bit tighter. Maybe you start to feel your heart pounding. Maybe you just feel that irritation and frustration. That's acute stress. A stressor happens, getting stuck in traffic, and your body responds to that stressor. And those can be happening all throughout our days, our weeks, our lives. Chronic stress, it's that long-term effect of stress. It's when there's a lot of stressors that we're dealing with, over time without enough strategies to deal with it or enough resources for support. And it can just have that feeling of just something needing to give, or just sometimes people will say they're hitting that breaking point or that boiling point, or that feeling like an elastic band, like it's just pulled so tight it can't take anything else. And when we stay in a chronic stress state over time, that's when stress can really start to have symptoms to it. And it's important for us to know if there's not enough ebb and flow, where maybe we're in a higher state of stress, but then we come back in and it's not so bad. And then maybe there's a little bit more, but then we come back. We're ebbing and flowing with levels of stress, and our body is recovering as a result and coping. But if it's just high stress, press, push, push, push all the time, there's not that recovery time. And that can start to impact our overall health and well-being, including our mental health. So it's important to know, what does stress look like? What does it feel like for you? So for example, if I'm really stressed, I will often get a bad headache. I will often get like just really tight muscles in my neck and back. That's when I know it's like, okay, stress is talking to me here. This is the language of stress through my body, and how am I going to respond? How am I going to deal with it? And stress symptoms happen in all dimensions of our well-being. They happen with physical symptoms, emotional symptoms, mental or psychological, and spiritual symptoms. So our whole self can be impacted when we are experiencing stress symptoms. And this isn't to be alarmed if you see some of these things on here and you think, I'm dealing with that, I'm dealing with that. What this is, again, if awareness is prevention, it's a chance to be aware that your system's needing something. It's needing to rest. It's needing to recalibrate. It's needing to replenish. It's needing to have some of the stress load reduced, so that you aren't carrying such a heavy load, and it's playing out in your own health and well-being. So physically, people can get headaches and muscle aches and different, stomach, gastrointestinal problems, digestive issues, because literally that rest and digest cycle is impacted if we're under too much stress for too long of periods of time with chronic stress. People can have difficulty sleeping. Lots of people do have difficulty sleeping, either getting to sleep or getting enough restorative sleep. There can be weight loss and weight gain. I'm just going through these very quickly. But emotionally, you might feel frustrated and irritable, impatient. There can be that sense of just apathy and sadness, depression. It can be a feeling of hopelessness and overwhelm. Psychologically, people can just have a harder time concentrating and be more forgetful. It can be hard to make decisions. Even going for lunch, trying to figure out what you want to order off a menu can just feel like you just don't know. It could be that loss of sense of humor and overall feelings of joy. And spiritually, things can start feeling less meaningful. And there can be that sense of disconnection and more challenges in relationships. Be a lot of worry about the future. So these are like invitations. These are the things our bodies, our mind, when we're under a lot of stress, might be experiencing. And it's a time to really be compassionate with ourselves. It's like, okay, I notice that I have a headache and my muscles are hurting. I really am feeling the impact of stress. What am I going to do about it? What can I do today? What can I do tomorrow? How can I come back into that sense of balance and equilibrium within myself, and tend to that day by day? I like to take quick polls, quick inventories for myself, and I suggest this as a stress management strategy for you as well. And that is being able to really consider your own stress levels. So again, without judgment, to know, and I just use a simple red light, yellow light, green light. So red light is like, I'm looking at that sheet, that slide that was just up, thinking I have tons of these different stress symptoms and I'm really feeling overwhelmed by stress. And I know I need to, regroup, de-stress. The yellow light zone would be, yes, you're experiencing some stress symptoms. You have a certain amount of, volume of stress going on. You're doing okay, but you're certainly feeling it. And the green light zone is, yes, there's stressors there, but you're feeling engaged, you have lots of energy, you're sleeping well, you feel healthy, you feel like you're managing stress very well. So I'm just going to launch a quick poll, and this is anonymous, just to get a sense in the collective here, whether you feel at this time, generally speaking, if you would say you're in the red light zone, yellow light, or green light. And there's no right or wrong. Awareness is prevention. Doing this exercise is part of stress management. And I'll just give it a moment for your responses to come in. Thank you, everyone, for participating. We are at 29 of 40, 30 people. I'll just give it another second here. Okay. Responses are still coming in. Okay, I'm going to stop the poll there. Thank you for everyone who's been able to respond. And I'm just going to share the results. So you can see here in our group that 21%, 7 people, 33 people were able to respond, are in the red light zone. Just over half, 18 of 33, are in that yellow light zone. And 24%, 8 people said they're in the green light zone. So we can see from this that 76% of people who responded are in the yellow or the red light zone. And that is understandable. The type of work you do can be very stressful. All that everyone, all the changes going on have been very stressful. And so what that means is it's that real call to yourself. I'll stop sharing this, and thank you for participating. To be able to just be that in that gentle energy with yourself, there's no need for alarm. That awareness is already helpful. And I love this quote. It says, there's no need for alarm, only awareness. Keep in mind that it's not the load that breaks us down, it's the way we carry it. So how can we carry it as lightly as possible? How can you get relief from stressors? What can you do day to day to help bring that down, to touch into that green zone? And for those of you in the green zone, to really think about, what are you doing? What's going on that's helping you be in that green zone? Because of course we can fluctuate, something can happen, and all of a sudden we're in a yellow zone, a red zone. Well, what do we know about what it takes to get into the green zone? And that's what I'd like to look at here for the rest of the time we have together. I really think stress management, it takes a lot of courage, takes a lot of awareness, takes strength. What is it each day? What is the next right thing to do to support your well-being and reduce stress? Very simply, the stressor is that thing that causes us stress. The stress response are those symptoms that we can get from the stress, which is opposite of that relaxation response in the body. And stress management are all the things that you do to either reduce the stressors or increase your resources and ability to cope with them. Those are really our options, and ideally we're doing both. So I just want to take a moment to de-stress here in this moment, and we're going to do a little exercise. I invite you to do it with me, and I just want you to make an imaginary windshield wiper with your arm. So you're holding your one arm, you can see me in the video, and your other arm is your windshield wiper. And I just want you to imagine that you're moving your windshield wiper at the speed your thoughts are going right now. Just moving your arm back and forth, mirroring the speed of your thoughts. And just notice what that feels like in your body and your mind. And just take a breath, let it out, and let this windshield wiper drop in speed by half. Your mind might still be going at a faster rate, but just let your windshield wiper drop in speed by half. Take another breath. Just notice what that feels like. Now drop your windshield wiper in half again. Slowing it right down. Now slowing it as slow as you can go in this moment. And take another breath. Just notice how it feels to slow this windshield wiper down. Notice how it feels in your body, your mind. You can just set your arms down. Just notice how you feel right now, giving your body a chance to slow down. Just with that simple exercise. I've been touching on some things already, but I want to take a few minutes and quickly go over some stress management strategies. Stress awareness is a strategy, and that's what we've been doing together. It's really giving you a chance to think about it, be aware of what some of the symptoms can be, and now we want to meet that with self-care. So if I'm in a red light zone or you're in a red light zone, what self-care do you need to help get in a yellow zone, a green zone? And self-care, very simply, and as caregivers, you know a lot about caregiving, is how do you give that care to yourself? What do you do on your own behalf to feel relaxed, grounded, centered, replenished, refilled, refueled? How do you care for your mind, your body, your emotions, your spirit, your essence? And self-care is one of those antidotes to stress. And the last slide, you'll see there is 2 circles, because with stress management, there's always what we can do individually for our own self-care. And then there's also what's going on in our environment, what's going on for wellness in the workplace, like educational sessions like this, what's going on in the team for peer support. That could be a whole other webinar, is workplace wellness. But we're just going to look here for a moment at what you can do that's in your control for yourself around self-care. How do you fill your own cup? And I love this quote, "How much self-care do we need?" by Francois Matthews. She does a lot of work in the area of compassion fatigue. She says, "I don't think that the aim is to race through our days at rocket speed and then collapse in a heap at the end of the day on our couch or yoga mat and call that self-care." Those things are good, of course. But she says, "I think that self-care needs to be a moment-by-moment process where we notice, like you're doing here in this webinar, we pause, like you're doing here, we breathe, and then we keep on going with what we're doing what we're doing. If we have to, we take some time out to refuel and reset. And this cycle of breath, reset, refuel, rinse, repeat, is that ongoing replenishing that we do throughout our days, ideally with awareness and ideally as often as we can. Because stress management isn't a single event. It's the accumulation of the choices we make moment to moment, day by day, that truly help us manage and deal with the stress load that's in our midst, individually and also collectively, in your teams, in your workplace, in your families. And one size doesn't fit all. I'm going to share 6 key strategies you can use, and you'll know best at this time which ones might be where you want to give some of your attention and energy. Just like stressors impact us all differently, what we do to deal with stress also is an individual path where there isn't a one size fits all, but there are things that can really help. And these won't be new to you, but I want to really shine a light on them. And as I go through these briefly, I want you to ask yourself, which ones of these stress management are you doing on a regular basis, and how are they helping you? And which ones maybe aren't you doing that you know that if you did a little bit of would help you to reduce stress and to really be managing stress in whatever higher way you might be wanting or needing to at this time. So you want to be able to set realistic priorities. There are so many competing imperatives in your work, in our lives, to just keep that question up front. What matters most right now? Maybe it's getting a drink of water. Maybe it's taking a bathroom break. Maybe it's being fully present with this resident you're helping care for, in the moment. But just really looking at priorities. We can't do everything. We can't do everything all at once. And how do you say to yourself, I did my best today? At the end of the day, maybe there's things you didn't do and you did do, but to put your head on the pillow when you go to sleep and say, I did my very best today. I tended to the priorities I needed to, and to keep kind of giving yourself that acknowledgement and reassurance. Because I know that in caregiving fields, people are doing their very best every day. It doesn't mean we always get it all right. It doesn't mean we've always done it to the level we might want to, but it does mean you're trying hard every day and you're giving a lot of yourself to other people, to your workplace, to the people you care about, and that matters. And so coming home to yourself, how do you give that care to yourself? Imagine if you were caring for someone you really loved, a child you love. To think of yourself in that own way. What do you need? What are the priorities for your care? And how can you meet that? And that involves taking care of your body, our physical bodies, these vessels that move us through our days, that we need to hydrate, drinking water, feeding ourselves in ways that give us energy. Certain things we eat can give us that fuel we need, and certain things don't. And when we're stressed, we tend to crave more sugars and salts, and we might not be giving our physical bodies the support they need from a healthy diet. Getting enough sleep and rest. This is when our organs replenish. This is when we build the fuel we need for our days. Everything you can do to get a healthy sleep is in service to coping with stress. Moving your body. Our emotions get stuck in our body. Stress gets stuck in our body. Moving, stretching, dancing, running, any kind of movement, even micro movements in your day, moving your wrists, your neck, staying in a state of fluidity in the body really helps, because stress can just lock right in. When we stay moving, we help release it. And when we're exercising, we help to reduce cortisol, which is the stress hormone in the body. And movement is the number one way we can do that. When we move our bodies, we move our emotions. If we're feeling really stressed, just going for a brisk walk can change that emotional state. So ask yourself, how are you moving your body every day? How are you feeding it, hydrating it, resting it? That's giving the best support to your physical self as you possibly can. And every little bit helps. Taking care of your mind, really protecting it from negative messages and news overwhelm and social media feeds and rumors. Our minds are these precious spaces that we have to take charge of and say, did that half an hour on Facebook scrolling, did that lift me up? Did it make me feel better? Was it a good use of my time? Was it tiring? Was it filled with, comparisons? To just give yourself a chance to unplug so you can recharge is so important. Our minds need those mental breaks. And our thoughts create our feelings. So how can you give yourself, positive affirmations? I'm doing my best today. I feel strong and healthy today. I'm capable of managing stress in my life. Let your self-talk, your mental space, be a great service to your well-being and care as a caregiver. And that takes attention over and over again to really do that. Focusing on what you can control. Control the controllables. This little circle here is from some research done by the late Stephen Covey. You maybe have heard of him. He wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And his research showed that about 50% of what goes on in our daily lives as human beings, we have no control over. Still can influence us. The weather, for example, 35% we have some control, some influence, and 15% we have control. And so the idea is the more of our attention that we put on what we can control and what we can influence, the more empowered we are, the lower stress tends to be, because we are having effect. We're putting our attention where we can make a difference. And it also tends to lead to greater feelings of happiness and fulfillment. So throughout your day, are you doing something that's in your zone of control and influence? For example, if you were, at work and maybe there was some gossiping going on, can you choose to step away so that you're not in that sort of, toxic field of something that's going on, so you can reduce your own stress level? And these things happen all the time where we're choosing and having to decide where we put our attention, because what we focus on grows. So we want in our days to also be taking time to center and ground ourselves. And the best way to do that, and the easiest way to do that, is with your breath. You're doing it anyway. So for example, taking a slow breath or a breath in, noticing the pause, exhaling, letting the exhale be longer than the inhale, will engage the relaxation response. It will counteract the stress response in the mind and body. Doing box breathing, it's sometimes called 4x4 breathing, where you inhale for a count of 4, pause for a count of 4, exhale for a count of 4, pause for a count of 4, as if you're making a square box. This is taught in the military to help mitigate risk for PTSD. It's used as an effective way to manage stress. Your breath is a great ally. You can Google, search breathing exercises to reduce stress, and it really helps your whole central nervous system to recalibrate and be able to cope with stress. So ask yourself, how are you taking time to center and ground yourself each day? It can be meditation, journaling, breathing exercises, time in nature. You'll know best. And I'm going to leave you with a little exercise, and that is the practice of gratitude. There is a ton of research on gratitude as a stress management strategy. Gratitude activates our resilience, and it helps us build that stress resilience. And if you, even right now, I invite you just to bring your hand up over your heart, connect with your breath. You don't have to do anything special with it. Just notice it entering and leaving your body, giving you life. Just take a moment to acknowledge yourself for all the caring that you do in your home, your relationships, your friendships, in your work, with your colleagues, the people you care for. And just take a moment to feel gratitude for yourself. Gratitude for all the caring, all the serving, all that you're doing day to day. And just allow that feeling of gratitude to ripple out from your heart center, out through your body. Allow the feeling of gratitude to fill you from the top of your head, down your face, your shoulders, your arms, down through your belly, your spine, over your hips, your legs, over your knees, your calves, out through the bottom of your feet. Just let your whole body fill with a feeling of gratitude. Just notice what that feels like. And I leave you with an activity. You can take your hands down now. I know we're needing to open up to some questions. Just let that feeling come with you into your day. A nice thing you can do before bed is, or first thing in the morning with your morning coffee or tea, or before shutting the lights out at night, is to do some gratitude journaling, just writing down what you're grateful for from your day, from your life. And it can activate a lot of healing properties in the mind and body. And I'm just going to offer one more quote and then open it up for a couple questions. I love this quote and hope you do too. Self-care should not be something we resort to because we are so absolutely exhausted that we need some reprieve from our own relentless internal pressure. True self-care is not salt baths and chocolate cake. It is making the choice to build a life you don't need to regularly escape from. So thank you for being here. I hope that you've enjoyed our time together. I know I've gone a little bit longer. I want to just open it up for any quick questions there might be. And I'll leave you with a question. And it's, what is one action that you'd like to take from this time together that can help you manage stress? And a way to think about that is, what's one thing you know if you did in a regular way would have a significant positive difference on your stress level? Questions, comments?
Thank you so much, Linda. We're getting some thank you messages. And there's a raised hand, so I'll just allow that person to ask a question.
Hi. Hi there. I just wanted to ask, my chat is disabled, so I was wondering if it was just me or not.
Oh.
And I guess it is because
You can use a question and answer box to type in any of your questions.
okay, not in the chat. Thank you.
No problem.
Thanks, Donna.
I just wanted to say thank you. I really resonated with the part where you said, try to apply some of the techniques you use to care for others to yourself. And that was kind of a light bulb moment for me, because I'm a mom of two. So I often think about, well, it's time for, naps, or it's time for snacks. It's time for this. And then I don't really think of myself like that. So I'm often the last one to eat or the last one to do those things. And it's okay to apply that is such a great, we have a bunch of questions coming in. So here we go. So a lot of thank yous. The question that you asked, someone said practicing gratitude is what they're taking away, which is awesome. Someone else said mindful breathing daily, not just when I'm yellow or red, which is awesome. And someone said many thanks. This was very helpful. Walking daily would help me with stress. I've done it before, but in recent years, I've let it slip. So people going back to some of the things that they remember to do. Just being mindful of time. If there's any other questions that anybody has, I will be sharing the recording for this webinar, as well as any resources that were shared, as well as Linda's contact information. So there was a question about the access to the webinar. Yes, the webinar will be accessible after. And I will also share Linda's contact information, as I mentioned, and any other questions that come up. Just lots of thank yous, and some of the practices people will be doing, which is so awesome to see. Just reminders to ourselves that we should focus on that. If you didn't have a time to ask a question, or a question comes up later, please feel free to send me an email, and I will definitely forward your information along to Linda. I will be sharing Linda's contact information, the recording of the webinar, and any resources we talked about. I just quickly want to take a minute to share some quick thank you about, and just mention that we have released our 4th episode for the Care for Caregivers podcast, which is called Care to Listen. So if you have some time, I'd really love for you guys to take a listen to that. And also just let everybody know that this recording for this webinar and webinars that have happened before are all available under resources on the Care for Caregivers website. So if you haven't accessed that, I encourage you to do so. And our next webinar is going to be on Wednesday, and it's on de-escalation strategies for healthcare. So if you're not signed up for that, please do so. And yeah, I'm just going to give it another minute for any questions. Lots of comments. Awesome. It's so nice to read the comments about what everybody will be taking away and what they'll be practicing, which is great. And like I said, even after the fact, if a question comes to you, please let me know. But thank you so much, Linda, for taking the time to speak with us today. I personally found it so wonderful and so much to take back and think about for my everyday. And all the comments that are coming in are so appreciative as well. And I will connect with you after the webinar. And thank you everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Go well, and thank you for all the meaningful caring work you do in our world. It's really appreciated, and it makes a difference. Take care. Be well.
Bye-bye.